This episode of Southeast Iowa Today is brought to you by Griner Auto Body of Washington, Iowa, using state-of-the-art techniques and decades of experience to get your car back on the road after an accident. Car Doctor of Washington, Iowa. No matter who Frankensteined it, they can fix it, clean it, and customize it. McDonald Boneyard of Keota, Iowa, for all your farm equipment and auto recycling needs. For great food, it's your choice. Your Choice Family Restaurant of Wayland, Iowa. Open Tuesday through Sunday. Come to our cruise-ins this summer on the second Tuesday of the month, June through September. Girling Repair of Winfield, Iowa. If your mower is dead, call Fred, your Husqvarna, Aaron's, and Gravely dealer. Fred also fixes and sells snowblowers. B&B Propane and the family of Jet Stops. Dutch Market and Coffee Talk of Washington, Iowa. Dutch Market can handle all of your grocery needs. They even have a conference room you can use for free. Coffee Talk's drive-thru is open and ready to serve you coffee, energy drinks, sandwiches, baked goods, and ice cream. They all present you the award-winning Southeast Iowa Today. Here's the author of Christie's Journey, The Beat Goes On, and your host, John Bain.
Thank you, Cody Roy, the announcer that you are of NewEnglandDukes.com, and your Golden Pipes for that wonderful introduction. You see this guy with me? You know we're day tripping. Welcome back, Bob.
Thank you.
Tell the folks where we're at.
We're in Maquoketa, Iowa at the Jackson County Historical Society Museum, and we are in their machine shed building that has a lot of old horse-drawn farm equipment that you should enjoy.
That's right, and we're going to meet again. Phil Gent is going to show us around, and this is part two of at least two or three. So let's get on inside.
Let's go.
Okay, Phil, we're in another section.
Okay, we had a variety of pieces of equipment used to process seed corn in the day. And so we approached the Cornelius family, the Cornelius Seed Corn Company, and showed them what we had and what also we'd like to have. And so they put together a lot of this printed material. And this board is a timeline of the development of seed corn.
Huh.
In the day, farmer would go out with a team of horses and a wagon like this and pick the ear corn by hand.
Wow.
And I think that it was usually a good job if a guy could fill a wagon like this in a day. But that would have been what they called a three-board wagon.
Okay.
This is two boards.
So this isn't even the as big as what they were filling.
No, they would have usually been three boards high.
Wow.
And I think it held somewhere around 60 or 80 bushel.
Wow.
Is all. And but this is an authentic wagon. And then as they go through the field picking corn, if they ran into extra special size and shape of ears that had some really nice kernels, they would collect those ears and put them in a basket or a bucket or something in the back of the wagon.
And they had to analyze that pretty quickly because they had to keep moving.
Yes, they would. Yeah. Yep. So here's a corn sheller. They would use this to shell the corn, maybe save the ears, but also to get the kernels off the cobs to feed it to livestock.
Okay.
And then these items are all special items to clean and grade the shelled corn, and that they were going to save for seed for next year.
Wow. Wow.
Up overhead is a variety of pieces to put the select ears on, and hang them up inside the barn or the house or wherever to let them dry. and then through the winter, as the kernels dried, they would go ahead and process them with some of the equipment maybe,
Okay.
and get them ready for use for seed next spring.
Huh.
And then on the wall, we've got a small collection of seed sacks from around the area, eastern Iowa pretty much. And there was a very large number of seed dealers back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and then they kind of dwindled away, as usually happened in the later years.
I'm imagining back then it was probably more their cells were probably based more on geographical location instead of competition.
Yeah, and everybody tried something new to make a few extra bucks, and tried their hands at most anything possible, and some of them survived and some of them didn't. So pretty much the way it went.
Yeah. I mean, when people say there's nothing to see or do in Iowa, it just shows how uneducated they are.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's like everything else. A lot of people are really drawn to and enjoy history.
Yeah.
Some people don't. So
good point.
If everybody did the same thing, we'd be overcrowded.
And bored.
And bored. Probably, yes.
All right. Where else should we go?
Well, we can start with tillage equipment if you'd like.
Let's keep the camera rolling and we'll just go keep on keeping on here.
Okay. We have a kind of a mix-up of various things here, but we just haven't gotten everything put away for in their respective areas for the spring and summer season yet.
Okay.
But let's start over here. We earlier were talking about the oxen.
Yes.
And here's a photograph and some articles about the use of yokes of oxen and how they did field work with them. And here is an actual yoke that was put over the necks of the oxen, and the tongue of the wagon or implement would go through that ring, and that's how they did it.
And that doesn't look that strong, but that held their necks.
Yeah, well, yeah, most of it was up here, I think. But
okay.
I kind of suspicion that this was added
okay.
by someone. There's a lot more authentic one that was in the barn that we didn't talk about.
Gotcha.
And but that's the basic idea anyway. And as I understand it, there were a pretty large percentage of people back in the 1800s that had oxen, and not necessarily all horses.
Okay.
So,
and you had mentioned earlier horses were more expensive.
Yeah. Yes, they were. Yeah. Here is a plow that is a cast iron moldboard. This particular plow had a patent of 1797. 1797. Now, that doesn't mean this plow is that old.
Sure.
But this design was patented then. And the main thing for this plow, for the patent of 1797, was a two-piece moldboard. You can't see it, but there's a crack right through there. And this bottom piece, I think they called the lay, you could replace as it got worn off.
Okay.
When the pioneers came to the Midwest, they had a big problem in tilling soil. We had very high organic soils. a lot of clay and organic matter that was not typical in the eastern states.
Mm-hmm.
So they started out originally, of course, with wood plows. But then when they went to the steel plow, it was cast iron, and the soil would not slide off the cast iron.
Just clump up.
It just take on it, and And so here's two original cast iron type plows.
Wow.
And then a lot of us have heard of John Deere.
Yeah, I think I've heard of John Deere.
He was one of two guys that developed the steel plow, and that would scour. And that was in 1836 and 37.
Wow.
And the rest is history. But here's two really old steel plows. And this one has a long sweep on it. This is called the sod buster.
Okay.
And it was designed to help roll the thick sod over, which was a very big challenge for them at that time.
Oh, and just think when they were actually first using them for the first time, and said, "What a difference!"
Yes, that would have been, yeah.
And back then they still weren't wearing green John Deere caps yet. They didn't have those.
Probably not. Probably not.
But if they did, they'd be wearing them, wouldn't they?
Yes, they would have been. Yeah. And this is an example of an early riding plow. They called the sulky plow. Okay. The sulky plow was a single bottom, and this particular one is an Emerson. And when we cleaned out this building and put this, redid the displays, this plow was covered with grease and dirt and you name it.
Huh.
And I took it to a local business that had a steam cleaner for equipment. And here's the way it turned out.
It turned out very nicely.
It was a three-shade, three-color plow eventually, originally, and the grease and the dirt preserved the paint on it.
That's amazing.
And show you a couple more as we go through that. That was happened a few cases. Up overhead is just some really older plows, and that were used before the moldboard plow, and called a sweep plow or a spade plow and various things, I guess. I don't really know too much about them, honestly.
Wow. One thing I know about them is when you look back in history and you compare it to today's farming, holy cow. Holy cow.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Also, at one time, they never had insecticides.
Oh.
They couldn't spray the horses to keep the flies and whatever off of them.
So what did they do?
So they had these fly nets.
Wow.
And that sort of helped, I guess, keep some of the flies and gnats off of the horses as they sweat a lot.
Because they'd sit on the pieces. Is that rawhide or what is that?
Yeah, it's rawhide. Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
Yep.
Well, they were trying to help them out.
Here's a gang plow, which is two bottoms, and
that's a John Deere, right?
Yes, that's John Deere.
Okay.
And hanging on the wall is the hitching mechanism to put 5 horses to pull this plow.
Wow.
The one bottom plow, sometimes in the right conditions, you could probably plow quite a while with a single horse, but 2 were better. And the
5 had to be great.
Yeah, it would be. So in this case, maybe you could get by with 4 horses, but 5 or 6 was preferred.
Yeah.
And so.
But then horses were more expensive too, Bob. You got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, they definitely were. And here is a drag harrow. Most people had to walk behind the harrow. And they say that some dads, fathers, felt that the horses were here to pull the harrow, not for you to ride or ride behind.
Okay.
Well, so once in a while, somebody was lucky enough to have a harrow cart, and they could ride on the cart behind the harrow.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now here's a disc. Darn it. Here's a disc now with the joints come apart down here, and this disc has those wood bearings in it we talked about earlier.
All right.
And there was a grease zerk set on the top here, and you could later on when they came out with grease guns, you put your grease in here, and of course it worked down to the wood bearing. Originally, some people just poured oil in there too.
Okay.
So this is a very unique piece. I think I mentioned earlier when we went through some museums out in Nebraska.
Yes.
And I found one of these. We had no idea what this thing was.
And I still don't.
That is a road marker.
Okay.
You would ride it through the field one way and make 3 marks, and they're spaced 42 inches apart. And then you could use that as markers to make halfway straight rows when you planted.
And there's some young person watching or listening to this right now. Hey kids, this was before GPS.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And of course, the earliest corn planting was with the handheld planters. These came on the market about 1850, 1852.
Wow.
And you would go through the field one way, then you go through the field the other way, and so you'd have, quote, a perfect grid system of 42 inches. 42 inches, of course, was preferred because of the width of the horse.
Gotcha.
So you walk between the rows. And so you had that grid system, and then you would walk together with the hand planter and plop that in and drop seed at every crossing. Sometime later, then they came out with 2-row planters. The same thing with a crossbar that you put over your shoulder. You'll walk through the field and plant the corn.
Then you line up, 5 or 6 guys to your left and right, and everybody had it.
And you can really get corn planted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Here's an interesting corn planter that came from Clinton County. Another case where it was covered with dirt and grime. And we literally went to this thing with Murphy's oil soap and water and soft bristle brushes. Wow. And this is what we ended up with.
Well, that was a good testimonial for Murphy's oil soap for
yes,
sure.
Yes, it was.
That.
And look at how well that paint was preserved over the years.
That's amazing.
But this guy called Art Wendell, I guess, bought a farm in Clinton County down by Charlotte someplace.
Okay.
And they found this corn planter buried in the hay in the back of the hay mow.
Huh.
And so he brought it to the Historical Society then, of course, and here we are.
I mean, you talk about old cars that people find in the barn. They call them barn finds.
Yep,
I mean,
barn finds.
This is the ultimate barn find.
Yes. So with this planter, the son or daughter or whoever sat on that seat as they went through the field, And then as they came to the cross marks from this row planter,
Right.
flip the lever and drop the kernels
Wow.
at every crossing of that marker.
Huh. Amazing.
Now you go from those handheld planters to this,
That's a big deal.
quite a major improvement.
You know, I've used the word amazing about 26 times today.
This planter, as far as what we can figure out, had a patent at 1884.
Wow. Wow.
Then, a few years later, a guy named, can't remember his name, Alva Mansour and Charles Deere, who was the son of John Deere,
Okay.
got together and built this planter. Mansour had an idea on improving the ability of the planter to plant systematic kernels and have a more uniform crop. And it was a rotary mechanism in the seed box.
Okay.
That seed box just had a plate that goes back and forth. This one has a wheel, and the kernels fall in the wheel. This wheel, a rotary mechanism, was primary mechanism till into the 1940s, maybe,
Huh.
almost 1950s. So this was developed in 1877.
Lasted a long time.
And it's amazing that manner of sorting out the seeds lasted that long.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Then a few years after they built this planter, they came up with a new attachment, an option, a factory option.
Factory option. I like that.
It's this piece laying on the floor. It mounts right here on the front
Okay.
of the planter, and this is if not the first, a very early design to use check wire. But at that time, they actually used rope.
Huh.
They had rope with knots every 42 inches.
Okay.
Then as that went through the mechanism, it switched, because when this planter came out, it was also the hand-operated deal with somebody sitting on the other seat. But then they went with the additional...
You know, that seat right there had to inspire seat cushions.
No, it's just darn tough skin. Yeah. So there is presumably is one of the fairly early John Deere planters, as far as I know. I'm not an authority on all the planters, but this is one of the pretty early ones.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I would say so.
Yeah. And then probably a close sequence of planters for John Deere is this 99.
Okay.
John Deere built a Model 9, a 99, and a 999 in steel wheels.
Okay.
And then after that, they went to the 290, which was the first rubber tire planter. A lot of people are familiar with the 290, and then they went on up from there. And so this was quite a jump up. And then as they went to the wire for the tripping mechanism, there's a roll wire, and there's the stakes that were put at the end of the field to hold the wire. As you went back and forth, you moved your stakes to go with you.
Wow. It's just, I mean, quite an example today of how far things have come.
Long ways.
Yeah.
And you know something that I think is very amazing? I don't know enough about the history and sequence of events, but a very large majority of the innovations of farm machinery and equipment were developed in Iowa, Wisconsin, and Illinois, some in Indiana. But Iowa and Wisconsin and Illinois did an awful large share of it.
That's
something
and
we still have a lot of it now with John Deere and Case IH, International Farmall, Alice Chalmers, Oliver.
A lot of pride there.
Yes, there is. Yeah. Good old German smarts.
There you go.
That pretty much is the lineup for, should we say, corn planting and that type of thing. Then we go into the small seeds such as grass, oats, wheat, and that type. You mentioned Kelowna and their museum there.
Yes.
My wife and I went through there a few years ago, and they had something in the corner of the building that I asked them what that was, and they had no idea.
Oh.
And I says, well, I can tell you.
Oh, there you go.
They had one of these tubes.
Okay.
Leaning up in the corner of the building. And that's all they had, so they didn't know what it was. And there's another one up here on top of the shelf.
Oh, yeah.
This is a wheelbarrow seeder.
Oh. So I'm guessing the seed went in that box.
Yep. Yeah, I can't turn the wheel because I've got stuff tied up here. Mm-hmm. But this wheel goes around, and this plate goes back and forth.
Okay.
And this thing here makes the plates go back and forth. Then that moves the plate back and forth in the seed box, and seed drops out.
Neat.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
But for the people that started out with these little handheld whirly birds, and tubes, this is a pretty major improvement.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yes, indeed.
What do you got to tell the folks, Bob? Like, follow, and subscribe if you're enjoying these episodes so we could keep doing them.
And even if you're not enjoying them, pretend you're enjoying them and give them a like.
Good point.
We appreciate you.
So then they had to harvest. Of course, they started with scythe. And then later, somebody came up with the cradle scythe. And when they wanted to cut the oats or the wheat by hand, and they wanted to accumulate them a little bit on piles for picking them up later, they'd catch it on every swing they'd get. They'd a pile on the cradle, and they'd just put them cradle piles on a pile on the ground for when they went through later on to pick them up.
Okay.
I heard or read one time that a guy with really good at the cradle and scythe could do up to an acre in a day.
Wow.
Kind of slow going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then along came Cyrus McCormick. Behind you is a replica, remanufactured example of what is assumed to be the first reaper in the world.
Wow.
Now that isn't this machine. This is a remanufactured for display. And our museum was lucky enough to get one. I don't know when, a long time ago.
It's big.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And there's a write-up of the information about the Reaper, and it says that it was used first in July of 1831 by Cyrus McCormick in Virginia.
Wow.
And someone in the state of Iowa made a few of them and spread them around to different museums in the state. And our museum was lucky enough to get one.
Boy, I'd say so. Very lucky.
Yeah. Very, very crude.
Yeah.
But I guess it worked.
It worked.
And pulled by a single horse. Then, as you needed to pick up your straw after the oats were harvested, or wheat, or grass for hay, or whatever, it was handiest to get the material put in the windrows so you could pick it up on the wagon and take it to the pile or the barn or wherever you took it.
Sure.
Here's a 1830s vintage sweep rake. The horses pulled it along the ground, and when you got enough material piled up on the front, you lifted this up and it rotated it and dumped it.
Okay.
And then the other points went on with you, and you tried to make long windrows.
Wow.
And if you got rain on the windrows and needed to fluff it back up so it dry better, here's a hay tetterer.
Huh.
Also from the 30s, I think. 30s. No, excuse me. This is 1880s.
1880.
Yeah.
It's just a pup.
Yeah. Then initially, of course, guys would go along and pitch the hay or straw on the racks by hand. And then the guys were lucky enough to accumulate a few extra bucks. They bought a hay loader. And then this put the hay or straw onto the hay racks.
Wow.
Here's an ad that I found of the Loudon company that we talked about before.
They made farming work a lot easier, didn't they?
They made a lot of very handy pieces. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Quite an interesting history of Loudon and the Masdam barns.
Yes.
They're in
Fairfield.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then we just have two riding cultivators. Well, one's a riding and one is a walk behind.
Amazing. And what's this big case here?
That is a Case 50 horse steam traction engine, they call it.
Wow.
That is also an original for the county.
Really?
Let's go around the other side. I've got some information we can look at.
Boy, you look at all those levers and steering wheel and the size of it. You had to know what you were doing to run that.
Yes, you did. And
everybody else better stay out of your way.
I don't remember the numbers, but that steam built up a lot of pressure.
Oh, I bet.
And so those machines could be pretty dangerous if you didn't know what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
This tractor was bought by, I got to look at the, I can't find the people's name. It was purchased by a Jackson County farmer in 1914.
1914.
It was built in Des Moines. Apparently, Case had a manufacturing facility there, and this tractor was built there and brought to Bellevue on a train, and then they drove it cross country from Bellevue over to Lamont.
Wow.
And I just wondered how many creeks and ditches they had to fill with trees
Yeah. Just
to
get
drive
over
this
it.
thing.
Yeah.
And it goes about, I think, somewhere around 1.5 to 2 miles an hour.
Wow.
And
amazing, just amazing.
yeah,
And noisy.
Yeah, I'd say it had to be loud.
yeah. That particular farm had 2 steam engine tractors on it.
Wow.
And the farm that line shaft system
Uh-huh.
came from is the same farm as this steam tractor came from.
Wow.
And he showed us one building that a steam tractor sat in that building practically all year. And its only use was running line shaft systems. Because they had a lot of livestock buildings and pump for wells and that kind of thing. This machine is used at least once every year yet.
Oh, really?
To run threshing machine by another group in Miles, Iowa, here in Jackson County.
Okay.
And so it still gets used.
That is neat. That is neat.
Then the threshing machine back behind is also from the county, and it's a 1941 Oliver threshing machine.
Huh.
And from what I understand, it's in very good condition. But we don't use it because we don't want to get all the grain and stuff in it and then store it in here and draw mice and rats and that kind of stuff.
There you
So,
go. Yeah. Makes sense.
So-
sense.
this corn planter is much, corn sheller is much newer. We have used it a time or two here on the fairgrounds during the fair, and it's run by a belt, of course, and still very functional and usable corn sheller.
Wow.
I don't know what the date is on it, but
It's got rubber tires,
yeah,
so it must be a little bit newer.
I would say it's probably in the maybe somewhere in the 40s.
Okay.
I would guess. So yeah.
Wow.
Here we have a little bit of a variety of wagons, typical farm wagons, basically.
And this is a John Deere.
This is a John Deere box, and
Triumph Special.
when we got it, I went to start cleaning it up, and I found out that the gear is International Harvester.
Well, there you
So,
go.
but that's a pretty typical situation. So but all we had to do was just clean it up and put some fresh paint on the gear and just clean the box up.
That must be why it has red wheels and
Yep.
on it.
I guess, although you can see that that seemed to be an almost a standard color
Okay.
in the day
Gotcha.
for this kind of a rosy red color.
Uh-huh.
But another example of what Murphy's oil soap can do.
Yeah, amazing. Bob, you need to buy some stock in Murphy's oil soap.
Yes, I think so.
Wow. Well, this is an incredible tour, Phil.
Here's a unique thing that we got. Another bone find.
Really?
A neighbor out west of town bought an acreage with a big old barn on it, and he found this thing in the hay mow and had quite a challenge to find out what in the heck it was. but it's a stump puller.
Okay.
This base is tied off to a tree or a stump, and then the other cable goes off to a stump you're wanting to pull out.
Gotcha.
And the horses would be hooked at the other end, and you would go in a circle, wind the cable around the spool. And as I understand it, a team of horses with this length of beam could increase the pulling capacity by 26 times.
Wow.
And so,
and that's when they say, when the stump comes out, the rest is history.
Yes.
I never heard that one before, but I didn't argue it. And so, but
I might have just made it up.
this company that made this puller originally started in Jones County, close to Monticello.
Okay.
And as their business started picking up big time, I don't know when, but they ultimately moved to, I think it was Monmouth, Illinois.
Oh, okay.
They needed to get to a bigger variety of availability of labor, and also railroad.
Wyatt Earp's birthplace.
Yep,
Another place we've been.
we've done a podcast there too in Monmouth.
Yeah.
And also their cruise nights.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, Phil, this has been a spectacular tour.
Good.
I thank you so much. There's so much on this today that I'm going to have to break these up in separate podcasts.
I told you would.
Because it won't, like, it'll fit on YouTube in one continuous thing, and Spotify, but Facebook, they'll never let me put all this in one thing. So I'm gonna have to break it up in several segments. And sir, it's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate your time today. If there was one thing that you would want to tell folks to give them the incentive or the little extra push to drive up from Southeast Iowa or anywhere to come here, what would it be?
How about 2 small items?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. We'll back up from here.
These are very recent items that we've added to the collection.
Okay.
Hopefully this one is out in the open enough to see it.
Cedar Rapids.
Yeah.
Heard of Century Engineering in Cedar Rapids? It eventually ended up with Universal. No, I think Universal was first, then it ended up in Century, maybe.
Okay.
But anyway, this rock crusher was built in Cedar Rapids. From what I understand, anywhere from 1926 to 1945.
Wow.
And it's a jaw rock crusher. They call it the jaw because as these wheels turn, this jaw goes back and forth.
Okay.
And then the rock works its way down and falls out the bottom. It's got a wheel that you can turn to adjust how far the jaw goes, and that determines the size of the gravel that comes out the bottom.
Amazing.
And it was purchased by 4 neighbors in Jones County. One of them was my wife's parents.
Oh, wow.
And 3 neighbors. And they bought it in 1946 for $150.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, the roads were not graveled. And some of them also had a kind of a long farm lane. And so they had to use this to put rock in mud holes.
Wow.
And so we brought it to town 3 years ago, I think. And a local blacksmith shop guy or welding shop took it all apart, cleaned it all up, and painted it, and we've used it.
Wow.
And
so it still can crush rock.
Still crushes rock. Yeah, we've used it 3 times. And, and if you want it sometime, I can get you a copy of a video of it running.
That would be neat to see.
Just, of course, it was run by belt pulley off the tractor.
Okay.
So
how long would it take to get a substantial amount of rock to get your job done?
Long time.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so.
One rock at a time.
Yeah, one rock at a time.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it had to be relatively soft limestone. One time we were running it, we accidentally threw a piece of granite in. It threw it right back out. Unfortunately, nobody got hit.
Yeah. Boy, that would have been something.
Okay, the other item is a windmill.
Okay.
Where are we going here?
Yeah, we're recording this on March 7th, 2025. And Mother Nature brought us this today. My goodness. Yeah. Okay. And what's the story on this windmill?
This windmill was donated by Larry Ward, who is the guy that cleaned up the rock crusher.
Okay.
And came off of a farm that he owned. And it was originally about 50 feet tall. And he sold the farm, and he wanted to preserve the windmill.
Well, that is...
So he offered it to the museum, and we said, absolutely, we'll take it. And we cut it down in size to fit the location here. But one amazing thing is, how often do you find a fan and a fin that's not full of rifle holes?
Not very often.
There's very few in the fin on that one.
Yeah, that is cool.
And we've got a stainless steel tank buried underground, and so it's totally functional.
Wow.
And we can pump water into a tank, and it drains back in underground, and you just kind of rotate the water on it.
That's pretty slick.
So anyway.
Well, Phil, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's been incredible.
It's been enjoyable.
Lots of stuff in there, Bob. There is a lot of stuff in there.
Phil, thank you so much. And thank you, folks, for watching. Get up here to the Jackson County Fairgrounds to
the Jackson County Historical Society Museum, and don't miss the machine shed portion because it's incredible.
It truly is. Thanks again for watching. Thanks to our sponsors, Griner Auto Body, Car Doctor, McDonald Boneyard,
Your Choice Family Restaurant,
Girling Repair, B&B Propane and the family of Jet Stops, the Dutch Market, and Coffee Talk. He's Bob DeWitt. I'm John Bain. Stay friendly, Southeast Iowa.